All right. I feel like we can probably get started here. And I guess just for a quick intro, I am Alex Simmons. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Boon. And I am so glad that you all are taking a few minutes out of your busy days and work schedules to attend today's Boon Live session. We've tried to get away from the word webinar, which I feel like we've all seen too many webinars over the last few years, but feel really grateful to have Byrd here with us, who's one of our amazing Boon coaches. And I think, it has felt like the election season has gotten overly polarizing, overly stimulating in a lot of different ways over the last however many months. And the conversation and the noise is just getting louder. And if you're anything like me, going down any of these rabbit holes on social media or anything like that is just doing you more harm than good. So, how are we going to be able to support you at Boon in kind of navigating those challenges you're dealing with and just thinking through some positive ways to deal with that, not just in your personal life, but in the workplace? So, our goal is to have a resource for you, not just for people leaders, but also just for everyday employees on kind of how you can think about some of the stress you're feeling in today's workplace. So, with that, I'll kick it over to Kim, and I would just say, as you have questions that come up, feel free to just throw them into the Q&A chat here, and we'll do some Q&A at the end. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about Boon, I'll be doing a little bit of breakdown as to kind of what we're all about towards the end of the presentation, as well as just an opportunity to sign up directly. So with that, I will kick it over to you, Kim, and thanks again for everybody being here.
Thank you. All right. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Kim. It's so good to be with you. I know some of you I've met throughout the years, and if I haven't met you, it's good to meet you. I'm glad you're taking time out today. Yes, we're talking about stress and anxiety and sort of ways to handle the election stress, political fatigue. But to be honest, I also am going to go over the holidays coming up. Election year and holidays don't mix well. So I want to give you some takeaways on how to handle, and navigate that difficult time. So, and hopefully some takeaways and some encouragement to increase your self-care. So we're kind of covering a lot today. And like Alex said, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If you want them to remain anonymous, you can send them directly to Alex. But the Zoom polls are completely anonymous, so there will be a couple of quizzes in here. But like Alex said, I'm Kim. I've been with Boon almost since it was born, which has been very exciting. I've been able to work with clients all over the world, do webinars. I also work at a public institution here, Oakland University, so I'm able to also support the students. So hopefully with some tips and tricks today, we can get everybody on their way to some increased mental health. So let's kind of talk first why we're here. I know that, well, I'm assuming that everyone on this call is a bit stressed out, either too much social media about the election, commercials interrupting your good shows, friends, family, coworkers, everyone talking about it, taking your dog for a walk and seeing election signs. So I want to talk today about how to manage that for you. It doesn't matter at all what sides we're on and how we view that, but what we do know is that this time is affecting us physically, emotionally, physiologically, psychological. So we want to go through and kind of touch on all of those. As we know, voting day is coming up, but we also know the stress will continue for a little bit after that. So I want to talk a little bit first before we dive into workplace. But what is stress? We throw around that word a lot, but we really want to define what it is. And I think by defining it, then we can address it sooner and quicker if we catch it. So we know that stress creates mental and physical demands on our body that in the moment we are not really like able to navigate. We have to take a step back, kind of see what our stress levels are and what is causing those in order to address them, right? It has a physical, a chemical reaction in our body when we feel that, right? Our muscle tension, racing heart, bellyache, headache, all of these signs that our bodies are screaming at us that we might be a little bit too stressed. So, what we know about work, right? There's 83% of workers in the United States are significantly struggling with work-related stress. So, we kind of mix the personal and work life. Hopefully today we're going to learn how to set some boundaries in there so that we can decrease our workplace stress. We're not taking that home with us. But about 1 million Americans miss work every day due to stress, burnout, feelings, being overwhelmed, feelings of anxiety. So it's very important for us and our workplace to understand where we are at as a nation. So when we think about the election coming up, I've listed some of the top struggles that my clients express that they are having. I'm sure there are 1 million more, but I think recognizing that political conversations inevitably are going to happen throughout our day. So we want to be sure we can navigate those as comfy for us as we can. So first, a little Zoom poll. Again, these are anonymous. You know, do you feel comfortable either hearing or talking about politics in your workplace? So I see that all the Zoom polls are here, and that's okay. You can answer all of them if you want, and we're going to go through them one at a time. So if we just look at the number one, right, we are a bit split down the middle. Yes, we feel comfortable talking or hearing others talk about politics, and almost half of us do not. So, small percentage of us don't care. So, let's talk and give techniques and talk about the research for both our yeses and our noes, because that way, both sides of us, can know how to navigate that. We're going to come back to questions 2 and 3 a little bit later in the presentation. So I pull data from the Pew Research Center, which in the beginning of 2024, they pulled over 1,000 companies to gather this data with the goal of understanding the challenges about the political dynamics in the workplace. Again, because of that huge number of folks that are stressed by work, about the political sort of policies about work, social media posting about election, about at work. So we've got about 65% of us that are exhausted, even thinking or talking about politics. So that political fatigue probably set in several months ago, and it might be reaching a point where we really need to address it. So I know some of you love stats and some of you can't stand them. I'm going to give you a few because I think it's good to understand where our employees are coming from. So we've got about 47% of men that say they will not accept a job if the company does not align with their political viewpoints, and about 37% of women. And about 60% of us in totality, we say we wouldn't leave a company if we have conflicting political views. So if we are at a job, we tend to want to stay, but that's where the stress and the political tensions come in. So those of us on this call that might be looking for a new job are a little bit more, I say, picky about where they do want to work. They want to make sure the company culture matches how they feel and how they see the world. So when we look at generations, because I think that's an important piece to all of this, right? Right now, that we are working with about 4 different generations in our workplaces. This is a huge amount of spread over culture, beliefs, traditions, patterns of behavior, right? So folks are having to work a bit longer than in the past due to financial stress. So we've got all the way from baby boomers to Gen Zs. So our communication styles between those generations usually pose a lot of stress in themselves. So we've got a lot of folks that are struggling kind of with, I want to avoid the whole political climate, but my workplace might be run by folks who really want to talk about it, post on social media about it, and I don't know how to deal with that because it's stressful for me. And others want to engage in conversations at work about their differences, and others want to leave their workplaces because of the differing opinions. So it's important to understand the differences in the generations and how they view these sort of office talks. So 77% want to avoid talking about politics altogether in the office. So companies need to understand this worry of their employees, right? And we want to talk today about how leaders, maybe HR leaders or other leaders in companies, can navigate setting up policies or setting up safe spaces for these conversations to happen. So we want to make sure if we are sharing our opinions or we're hearing others' opinions, we want to feel safe in that. Our workplace should be a place of safety, both emotionally and physically. So we want to have, over half of us want to have respectful political conversations, but only if they are being had in a safe space. So what are those? Like open forums, maybe anonymous surveys, maybe special conference rooms set up for lunch where people can talk about things, maybe bringing in speakers to the workplace. So how do you navigate both sides of the yeses and the nos on how comfortable do you feel talking or hearing about politics in the workplace, right? So as we have this stress at work, we also are going to have this increased stress as we prepare for the holidays. So most of my clients around this time period are increasing their stress about Turkey Day. So we want to talk a little bit about how to manage that. Everyone around your table probably has differing views. Whether it be on some of those topics that we saw in the beginning that are being discussed in the political climate right now, or just who they want to vote for and why. So we need to take charge of that conversation. We need to almost kind of be ready for it. If you don't use the techniques at turkey dinner, that's fantastic. But going in without a plan, when you know you are sitting around a table with people who might be very opinionated, might be very loud with their opinions, have very differing opinions than your own, you want to make sure, do I have some topics either that I consider safe to talk about or safe topics that I can divert conversations if they become heated? So what are those, right? So a lot of us will talk about our pets. We'll talk about maybe future trips that people have planned, maybe work projects, worst case scenario, the weather. But we've got to have some topics in mind to bring up as needed, right? So you, to give you a little bit of scripting ideas too, you get around a table and you've got that, one aunt who's very nosy. So not only do you've got the political people talking their opinions, but you also have other family members maybe asking you like, oh, are you still at that same old job? Or, hey, when are you two having kids? We've got to make sure that we're prepared for those types of invasive questions that we do not want to answer, especially at a turkey dinner table. So have some scripting ready, right? So if someone's asking you about your job and being very negative about it, say, something like, oh, you didn't hear? I won the lottery, so I just have a life of leisure coming my way. What's up with you? Have a little light statement to divert the conversation, and then ask them the same or similar question about themselves. Americans are innately selfish. They want to talk about themselves if they have a listening ear. It's very easy to divert conversations by giving a little light, maybe a comical sentence, but then turning the conversation on to the other. That's an easy way to get out of uncomfortable conversations, either at work or at home. So kind of think of the people that are going to be at your table. What are their views? What are some of those invasive questions they ask you that you do not like and they might ask every year? Be ready. Be ready to deflect those conversations. A lot of us are uncomfortable with confrontation, especially during the holidays with family we haven't seen very much. So if deflection doesn't work, my other idea is always take a time out, right? Excuse yourself. You have to go stir the mashed potatoes. You have to use the restroom. You've got to check on the kids in the basement. Make up a reason to get out of that conversation before your emotions start to escalate. So when we think about all of that, the word boundary comes to mind. And we want to remember the word boundary the entire rest of the presentation because we're going to learn how to set our emotional boundary to protect our emotional reaction. So if we are open and receiving everybody's comments, negative statements, negative views, differing views of our own, we can start feeling very, very heavy. We need to set those boundaries now as we prepare for the holidays and the election. So how can the leaders on this call create a supportive and friendly political workplace environment, right? We mentioned the anonymous surveys, maybe group meetings in a conference room, maybe some open forums where people can choose to log on and discuss, but people don't have to. They can stay out of the forums. Some of our companies have talked about giving some flexibility on voting day. It gives folks a little bit more time to vote and also feel very supported by their HR leaders, that they have some flexibility there. And a lot of the leaders have to lead by example. So the employees are looking and mirroring behaviors of their leaders. So at times, when a leader is feeling emotionally charged, maybe take your own time out, because what you're not realizing is the employees around you are watching you, your verbals and your nonverbals. They're going to mirror those. So outbursts, for example, might seem okay. If my leader is having an outburst about the political climate, then that means maybe it's okay to do that. So some folks will kind of stretch that and make it feel unsafe for others in the workplace. So you want to kind of really look, are you being an example? And we're going to talk about servant leadership later in the presentation, because our leaders, if they operate under a servant leadership theory, this doesn't become as stressful as it feels right now. So if you are a leader or even a coworker, and this applies for folks in your home too, we've got to be aware of behaviors that might signal that someone is struggling, right? So maybe calm, positive folks are a little bit extra edgy. Maybe they're angry, maybe they're confrontational, maybe they're saying things that are out of character or shutting down emotionally. We see a lot of absenteeism at work right now. People are calling in, call it sick days, mental health days, whatever. We're seeing a lot of folks call in and stay home from work. We see a lot of folks kind of pulling themselves away on projects that they are assigned to, creating a late submission on the deadline, causing leaders to stress out because work has to go on. A lot of loss of focus. I don't know if you guys are feeling this, but at times I honestly have to get up and walk out of the room and maybe go get the mail or something to refocus myself, because in the background of our minds are some of these stressors that we're talking about today. They don't just go away because we're working on a project or a research paper, right? We have to try to figure out how to stay focused to get things done. If our to-do list isn't done, we're stressed. So we're back on the stress cycle. So our leaders and employees, right? We have to take accountability too. The definition of a conversation is interesting, right? If you go into any conversation about any topic without the underlying goal of changing someone's mind or trying to get them to think like you or have your opinion, conversations actually go a lot smoother. People don't get as heated. If I'm coming to you to have a conversation with, I really kind of want to understand your side and you want to understand my side, that conversation usually is a lot calmer than someone going in with I got to get this person to think like me. They think ridiculous. I'm thinking correctly. That's when the heated arguments start, right? So companies we work with don't want to limit those conversations, but they do want to create that safe culture where it is a conversation that promotes calm, non-stressful, non-agitated settings. So we look at that and say, okay, what can I learn from this person? Even if I don't agree with them, there's always something that I can learn from them. So can you challenge yourself to sort of alter the way you enter conversations with people who have differing topics than you, different opinions than you, different ways of looking at the world than you? We may never get to a common ground, but if we're respectful and we go in with a learning curiosity, then we can learn and be calm in discussing. And then we get the opportunity to share our opinions too. So you feel heard, you feel validated, you feel like you belong. How do we do this but still feel comfy? I think that's the hard part, right? In the perfect world, everyone is great at conversations, both verbally and non-verbally. However, we don't live in a perfect world, so there's very few people that are excellent at it. So we have to figure out how to set that boundary, how to navigate that. We know most of our conversations around this time of year are uncomfortable. We know this. Being uncomfortable is fine. Actually, being uncomfortable is a space of learning, right? I tell my students that all the time. If you're uncomfortable, that's fantastic. It means you're going to learn something. But we don't push our comfortability too far because then all that's going to do is create stress for us. So when we feel that escalation in our bodies, whether it be starting to sweat, having stomach upset, racing heart, that's when we know the boundary has to come in. Where am I going to draw the line? Is this person trying to change my mind or push me to a point of argumentative conversation? If so, that's when my boundary needs to get set. So what am I going to do? I know that I'm responsible for my emotions, what comes out of my mouth, how my face communicates with people. I know that I am in charge of myself. So I need to take accountability for me. If I need to step away, if I need to make up a reason to leave the room, that's on me. I need to figure that out. Engaging in this like shaming or blaming or agitated speech is going to get me nowhere. Because remember, if I'm a selfish American, I want to make sure I feel good. I can't do that if I'm arguing with somebody or trying to change somebody's mind or they're trying to change my mind. I have to look at myself and say, is this the place I want a lot of my emotional energy to go to? If you're like me, there are a ton of topics during the day that my emotional energy goes to. I have to be picky. I don't have an unlimited bucket of emotional energy. It's actually quite small, depending on what's going on in your life. Is this worth me investing anger, anxiety, stress, agitation, frustration? Or can I just excuse myself to go to the bathroom where I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to self-regulate, and either I'm going to choose to go back into the room with that person If I do, can I sit somewhere else, or can I pretend I'm on my phone, or can I, talk with somebody else to avoid that conversation starting up again? So for the leaders, kind of being aware that this is happening, they can intervene, right? Offering support, offering help, offering a safe, confidential space for someone to talk out loud. Again, that person is going to feel heard and validated. Now, you might not be able to do anything about why they're upset at Steve for yelling to you about why you should think like him, but what they can offer you is a very supportive space to vent that and maybe share some ideas on how they get out of these tough conversations. I statements are great. We use I statements when we do couples counseling. I talk about I statements all day long with my patients. Use statements make people feel very defensive automatically. So if you're having a conversation with your partner, your family member, a coworker, if you start that uncomfortable topic with so I understand that you are feeling upset. I want to understand what made you feel upset. I want you to know I'm hearing you, and I want you to know that I want to talk about this in a way that I can understand where you're coming from, right? Instead of, you know, you accused me of this and I didn't do it, and you did this and I don't like it. That you that starts statements is one of our biggest communication flaws, and it automatically promotes defensiveness, and that protective wall of the person receiving the you statement goes up. The battle is on. So we try to use I statements as much as we can. So when we think about that servant leadership theory, right, all of these things come into play. If you lead with these 10 kind of ideas or processes or techniques in the back of your mind, what you are providing to your employees is a safe platform to promote and excel and learn and ultimately succeed. So you're putting yourself aside and creating a space for your employees. When you do that, the employee feels validated and heard. They feel supported. When you've got an employee that's processing everything in a very positive way, their output at work increases. So ultimately, you win, right? You're getting the deadlines met. You're getting quality work. You're getting people who feel valued at the workplace. So if you can go in with this active listening, having empathy, right? That doesn't mean that you have to agree or give in to your employee. If, they're late all the time, and that's against policy. We're going to talk about that. But how that conversation is navigated is the key. So that's where that I statement comes in, right? So we want to commit our leadership skills to the growth of others. We can look at ourselves and say, what areas do I want to grow in professionally or emotionally? But while I'm here from 9 to 5, I'm serving my employees. I'm giving them a platform for them to grow. Again, I am accountable for my emotions and my reactions. So I have to navigate these tough conversations with a little bit of empathy, with a little bit of kindness, and some active listening. That goes a long way. So you hear me talk about react and respond a lot, and this is a big one in both our personal lives and our workplace lives. So I'm going to talk about parts of the brain, but the amygdala is there in our brain. It loves to produce hormones and chemicals that we don't like, right? Adrenaline, cortisol, these are yucky. We have them for when we're in that fight, flight, or freeze, like that emergent situation. That's why they're there. They do create a space for us to navigate an emergency situation. We should not live in a constant cortisol, adrenaline releasing phase. And a lot of us who are constantly feeling stressed and anxious that aren't addressing it are living with a constant cortisol and adrenaline release. So you talk about emotional exhaustion. It's a big one. The other piece of that is those folks who are experiencing this as sort of normal for them, they're just reacting to everything that is said to them. When people react, it is filled with emotions, and usually those emotions are panic. And so when we panic, our language is much different than if we communicate without emotion and with calm thinking. So if someone responds to you, what that means is they've taken what you've said and they probably didn't like it, but they've taken a minute, they've thought about what you've said, they've thought about their emotions and how they're feeling about what you said, maybe taken a breath or two, and then they're responding. That response is usually without emotion and without panic. So then you receive it much calmer. That way the conversation isn't argumentative. Now, when you respond, that probably seems like it takes a long time, and conversations would be weird. If you said something and I took like 10 minutes to think about what you said, process it, figure out what emotions I'm feeling, and then respond back to you, it seems like it's a weird conversation. But the more you practice this, the quicker you are at responding instead of reacting. So at work, for example, I try to respond to either, clients, patients, students, whoever I'm working with at the time without emotion. So that's always my first go-to. Because if I respond either by matching or mirroring their emotion, or I'm in my reaction phase of panic, it does no good to anybody, right? The situation isn't resolved. The person is left still feeling anxious. I've done nothing to be a servant leader. I've done nothing to provide a safe space, a supportive environment, or active listening. So when we take that minute to process what has been said to us and deliver our response without emotion, that's when conversations can be productive. This is also at home with your partners. So when you're in a conversation that's uncomfortable, I'm curious what your go-to is. I've listed a few options. I know there's a million others, but I am curious to see what you've kind of identified as your go-to. So I know you guys answered this earlier, but I want to look at this. So we have about 9% of us get defensive, 27 maybe feel angry on the inside, but calm on the outside. And over half of us excuse ourselves. We give kids timeouts all the time when they're toddlers. I wish timeouts were normalized for even us old people, because a timeout, whether it be physically removing yourself and taking a timeout or mentally taking a timeout if you can't leave the room, does wonders to get rid of that reaction feeling, that panic feeling. Taking that time out actually creates us to respond either with I statements, calm comments, or validating that you have heard and understand what they are trying to tell you. So the folks that are taking a time out or excusing themselves, that's fantastic. I hope you do that both at work and home. A lot of us have had our resilience challenged since 2020. Resilience is not something that you are just born with a big bucket of resilience. Resilience actually has to be worked on every single day. It has to build upon itself every single day. And when we are going through stressful times, our resilience is taken out of the bucket and thrown away. If you're not aware of techniques to build your resilience, when you get into those difficult or challenging experiences, professional or personally, your emotional, mental, physical self cannot meet those demands. So then we start feeling negative. We become almost toxic sometimes with maybe how we change positive experiences into negative experiences, either for others or ourselves. Our language is different. It's a little bit more edgy and bitey. So the thought of resilience, right, is how we view and engage with the world. Again, accountability. The only person that is in charge of that is me. People can tell me, like, you are looking at everything with the glass half empty. You need to fix everything about yourself. Okay, well, that doesn't make me feel any better. So let's not go to that extreme. Let's figure out what our resources are. We've got some things already in us. Maybe they need some extra attention during this time because we are under stress, right? There's all these parts of us to consider when we're stressed, and building that resilience every day and working on that is the way to decrease that cortisol and adrenaline that none of us like. So, what are some coping strategies that we can use, right? We think about emotional detaching. Emotionally detaching is a bit tough. We can actually do this with family members, friends, and work. It's not detaching as in I'm never talking to, my sister again because she has differing political views than me. But when we're together, I'm emotionally detaching from those topics of conversation that I find frustrating. I am separating my emotions in one bucket, my feelings in another bucket, my behaviors in another bucket, and figuring out who am I and how do I feel in this environment, right? So let's think about personal for a minute. We all have people that sort of have these differing views or even differing ways to look at the world. Their resilience levels might be different than yours. I need to set expectations for myself. I'm not setting expectations for my family members or friends because all that does is disappoint you. Your expectations of you are the only things that need to be managed. Your expectations of others kind of need to be challenged. If I expect, say, my son to function as high and as successful as one of my students who has been in school for 8 years and my kid's a junior in high school, that's not fair, right? So what are your expectations of others, and are they real? Are they based in reality and capability of that person? A lot of times that answer is no. If you look at that objectively, that actually will help calm that nervous system and that feeling of anxiety that you might have. Let's talk about boundaries again, right? I am a different person at work. I'm work Kim, my mom Kim, I'm spouse Kim, I'm friend Kim, I'm daughter Kim. I'm all these Kims, right? So I have to do something to remember which Kim I am. I don't want to be work Kim at home. What am I going to do to separate work Kim from home Kim? That is very, very important that a lot of people, because we're busy, don't address. Some of you have commutes. Those of you that are going into an office have a commute home. What are you doing on that commute to set yourself up for a successful home Kim? Are you jamming out to 80s hair metal? Are you listening to your favorite podcast? Do you have all the windows down when it's a bit chilly? What are you doing? Okay, well, for example, if you're working from home, I'm upstairs. I only have a commute of about 20 steps. What am I supposed to do tonight? So what I do, right? So I go in the bathroom before I go downstairs. I actually brought my face wash up there. I wash my face. It's a physical stimuli that will change my work Kim mindset. We love routines. We love patterns. That's what humans love. What is going to be your pattern or your change in routine to identify the difference between you at work, you at home, you as a mom, you as a sister, you as a daughter. What are you going to do to change those so that the conversations you're having with the people in those domains is calm? So think about taking it slow and really dissecting what you are doing to sort of set that boundary so that you're a positive person and you're you when you get home, right? We all have stressful jobs. We can't bring that stress into our house. So I want to talk about scrolling for a minute. If I could take away social media, even Pinterest, all those fun websites, games on your phone, computer, I would love to. Everything on your phone, from social media, news outlets, home decor, pages you look at, anything you do on there, psychologically, it was developed to pull you in and keep you there. So we talk a lot about why are you scrolling? And most of us usually say, find myself scrolling usually in the evening because I am decompressing from my day, or I'm escaping a feeling or a thought that I just don't want to have right now. I'm escaping talking to people in my home because I am emotionally exhausted from my day. Notice I keep saying escaping, right? The problem with it is that your escape is actually feeding you very negative emotions. Now, whether that be looking on Facebook and seeing all the positive things and thinking that your life stinks and you don't have that many positive things, looking on political websites or podcasts, starting your day reading something about the political climate. These are all things that most of us are doing that are so detrimental, especially during this high stress time before election. So I want to encourage you to think about why you scroll. And we need to figure out how to create friction between you and your phone. So, like for example, one of the rules in our house is my husband and I love binging at night on TV. Now, am I escaping thoughts and probably tasks and things I should probably get done? Yes, I am. But I want to connect with my husband, so we have no phones. We're not allowed to look at our phones. We're not allowed, even on, commercials or Hulu breaks, we're not allowed to look at the phone. So that's a friction point that we put in place. Another friction point that families do is no phones on the kitchen table. I have a few clients right now that they're working on a challenge that they are not allowed to bring their phones into their bedrooms. So they can scroll and do all of the things that they want, but they have to stand at the kitchen counter with their phone plugged in there. No one's going to stand at the kitchen counter until 3 a.m. scrolling. But in bed, you would. You'd go down a rabbit hole and scroll till 3 a.m. You wake up exhausted, emotionally fragile, and the cycle continues. So, what is going to be your friction point when you say to yourself, why am I scrolling and how can I figure out to create a natural barrier for me? So, that's I know I'm not making you do a Zoom poll on it, but it is a huge challenge for well, I'm going to say everybody I interact with. The phone is creating challenges in relationships, cognitive abilities, loss of focus. And we think about how we might put timers on our kids' phones, right? You're allowed to play, Minecraft for an hour. That's all. I challenge you, set your screen time in your settings, act normal, use your phone as you normally would for a week. What's today? Tuesday. Next Tuesday, look at your hours. People tell me I don't have time for self-care, but when we look at their phone settings, they have spent the average is about 4 hours a day on the phone. And I know most of you are saying that I'm crazy, that that's not true. But I challenge you to set that screen time, evaluate where you are spending, most of your time. When we are feeling stressed, anxious, frustrated, agitated, we need to make a physical change in that moment. And what I mean by that is if you're working from home, you just got out of a meeting that was very triggering, I need you to go outside and get the mail or go outside barefoot and walk around on your deck. This is 5 minutes. I'm not talking about taking your dog for a walk for an hour. No one has time for that during the day. But I need 5 minutes to do something physical to change your mindset, right? So sometimes people tell me that they, brush their teeth. Some people go down and drink really, really cold water. Some folks take the walk. Some folks go out and sort of like deadhead their flower beds. What are you doing to make that physical change? Now, a lot of people will say to me, well, I don't have time to do that during the day. If you think about how many times, let's say you use the restroom during the day. If you're a big water drinker like me, that number is like a million. If I take 5 minutes out because I have to use the restroom, why can't I take 5 minutes out if I'm feeling agitated to regulate my emotions? Why is that less important, right? It's producing a physical reaction in my body. It's creating an emotional discomfort for me. So why am I choosing to like work through it or ignore that? It's just as important as going to the bathroom when you have to go. We've got to give those the same weight in order to protect ourselves emotionally. When we think about, I talk about self-accountability a lot. It's very easy for us to blame situations, others, for our lack of self-care, for our reactions, for our agitation, our emotions. But honestly, it's up to us, right? So I do not go on social media at all right now. I stopped even looking at Pinterest, even though I needed to redo my bathroom. We don't watch any TV that has commercials. We have done a lot of things to avoid triggering views, triggering things you hear. Sometimes my friends will send me political things to read. I choose not to read them. What are you doing to take accountability for your own mental health, right? So when I think about what you can do too is, are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you sad? Do you feel like you're questioning a lot today about yourself professionally or personally? Are you feeling emotionally vulnerable for whatever reason? If the answer is yes, then you don't do posting or reading on social media. I took accountability. I said, I'll take, for example, today. I fell asleep probably around 4 a.m. and woke up at 6:50 a.m. because my son had to register for his college classes at 7. So I know today I'm fine right now, but later I might be a little bit more emotionally vulnerable because I'm tired. I know what things I need to put in place for me. So your time, your attention, your emotional energy is so limited, but so important. You've got to figure out what you want to invest in each day. You cannot go as thin as a lot of us are going. So I know you guys look at the presentation. I did put some helpful links here as we navigate this emotional stress. But I thank you for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, or give you extra pointers, whatever you guys are on your mind.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kim. This was super helpful. I know I have several takeaways, and we're just actually going to, as a follow-up, we're going to send just some of the major takeaways from this, which everybody will hopefully have in like a one-pager. But I guess if there was just like one thing, Kim, that you could adjust in your routine or mindset to feel more centered during these sort of times, I guess what would that be? If you had to pick one thing.
One thing, gosh, okay. Because I am in front of people all day, I have to do things that maybe people don't know I'm doing. So for me, I do box breathing. I probably have done it yesterday probably about 6 times, if I'm going to be honest, right? So I'm creating a space. No one knows I'm doing it, but I'm breathing in, I'm holding it, I'm breathing out, I'm holding it. So I'm making a few boxes with my breath. And that automatically decreases that cortisol and adrenaline release. So
Hmm.
that's usually my go-to first.
I love that. And also, I mean, this goes without saying, but in addition to all of the self-care stuff that you can be doing on a day-to-day basis, this is one of the many reasons why Boon exists, which I can get into now. And I'm actually providing a sign-up link here for any employees who have their companies offer Boon as a coaching resource to them. Feel free to just click that link where you'll get access to Boon Coaching, where you can actually meet with somebody like Kim. And if you're interested in learning more, I actually just have this link in the chat as well. But I think just to give kind of like a quick blurb on why we exist, I mean, essentially at the genesis of what Kim is talking about today is that every employee has their own version of stressful situations that they're dealing with. I feel stressed and anxious daily. A lot of that for me typically has to do with things that are going on in the workplace. So, how can I grow Boon more quickly? How can I think about growing the company, being a more effective leader, having a difficult conversation with a customer? And so, whether it's, and Kim, if you just go to the next page, we found that every employee has their own version of that story, from individual contributor to CEO of the organization. And what we've done at Boon is we've created a single coaching solution that is able to solve the many needs of these employees. So, from individual contributor, first year intern to CEO at the company, we have created a democratized one-to-one coaching solution that's able to serve the many needs of your organization. So, if you're a people leader thinking about how to develop your people today, Kim, if you go to the next page, we have a few different ways that we think about our business today. We have Boon Scale, which is more of democratized coaching thought of more as an employee benefit, really kind of a confidential, safe space for your people to be able to grow. You're meeting with your coach via Zoom, just like this. We also have Boon Grow, which is more targeted cohort-based coaching for specific leadership development areas. And then we have Boon Exec, which is more executive coaching. So if you're looking to embed coaching as part of your employee development platform across your organization, I think what makes Boon unique is really our whole human approach. This Boon live session today was really focused around kind of the mental health side of everything that you're facing today. We think about Boon more broadly as professional growth for the whole human. So as you're thinking about developing your people, just keep that whole human in mind. And I think the other big piece of it is really just affordability. So as you're thinking about developing different techniques and whatnot, we're here, and feel free to take advantage of this amazing resource. So with that, I will just thank you, Kim, again for the time, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you learned something, and we'll be following up shortly.
Take care of yourselves.
Okay. All right. Take care.